Hey everybody, Dr. Joe's in the house on this Wednesday evening. I hope it's fine wherever you are on the first day of a federal government shutdown. Hopefully it's not going to be too long. And so I'm sure that's on the mind of a lot of people is what in the world is going on. Before I get too far, let me turn on Instagram. So Instagram's back in the house. But I mean, it's out of my control what's going on in the federal government, but I do know is this, at least my experience is that it doesn't really affect landlords in the sense that landlords tend to get paid during these shutdowns. So hopefully, we should be okay. Hopefully you'll get your Section 8 rents and so on. Anyway, my friends, let's keep going. So today we're going to talk about maximizing rent for your Section 8 properties, and hopefully I'm going to share with you a blueprint based on my experience on how you can leverage the power of Section 8 to get the maximum possible rents wherever you are located. So that's the gist of today's session. It's all about the money, and hopefully you'll learn something today that will help you if you're going to if you're considering using Section 8. Also, if you're considering requesting a rent increase, because you are allowed rent increases usually every year after the first year. As usual, if you got some questions, please put them in the chat box, and I'll try to get to your questions about 20 minutes from now, 15, 20 minutes. Anything to the real estate investing, put them in there. I'll give you my shot. But likewise, if you want to do a deep dive on a subject that requires a bit more time, more attention than what we can on this live stream, you can always book a one-on-one with me. You go to my website, www.joeasamoah.com. That's www.joeasamoah.com. I think I've got a couple this week left to do, so look forward to that. But anyway, we're going to talk about maximizing the rent. Hopefully your Section 8 blueprint. And let's start off with an introduction. I suppose the gist is that are you knowingly undercharging your Section 8 tenants and losing thousands every year? Are you shortchanging yourself? Are you leaving money on the table? What about it? And that's hopefully what we're going to talk about today. So for many real estate investors, especially those who are new, or managing multiple properties, figuring out what price to set your rent at under Section 8 can be a little, confusing. It's like navigating a little maze. Even seasoned investors, seasoned landlords with years of experience, often with multiple properties also have the same difficulty. We don't fully understand how the system works. There's different terminologies that we're going to use today that they use within the Section 8 program. There's terms like FMR, that's the fair market rents, FMR, fair market rents. There's another one called payment standards. That's another term that's used in Section 8. There's also a third one called affordability. So there's three terms: fair market rents, FMR, payment standards, and there's also a term called affordability. All those things are important when you are participating in the Section 8 program, and they must align. Otherwise, you may not get the rent that you're requesting, or you may be not, asking too much, or maybe not asking enough. So we're going to talk about, especially the FMRs, the fair market rents, what they are, and also the payment standards. We're going to talk about that today. And these are federal requirements that all housing authorities have to adhere to as part of the participate in the program. So there are jargon, but in reality, it's not as complicated, and we're going to talk about those things. So if you're not using them correctly, or you're confused by what they mean, you're probably not maximizing your income. So the key to success with Section 8 isn't just about offering a clean, safe, quiet, desirable place. It's also about mastering the regulations, knowing what your local market's going on, and also positioning your property for peak profitability. Okay, so in this live stream, we're going to design to help new and intermediate and seasoned investors, regardless We're going to talk about how the system works, and also you're going to learn some of the successes from people and failures, I suppose, from others. And hopefully, I'll share with you or create a blueprint that leads to long-term scalability and real estate success. So we'll walk you through the lessons learned that I've done, and so on. So as usual, it broke into 6 parts, and after each section, I'm going to have a quick summary with some action items that you could do. Okay, so let's start off with number 1, and that is understanding the power of FMR, the fair market rents, and the payment standards. FMR is the fair market rents and payment standards. These are terms. So that's where the question is, do you really know what your local housing authority is willing to pay you? Do you really know, or you don't know? Well, my thing is that you should know, because if you don't know, you're kind of guessing, and so on. So HUD's FMR, fair market rents, and your public housing authority, your PHA payment standards, are not just guidelines. They are the baseline for your income potential for your Section 8 program property. They are the baseline. They are the foundations. Okay, FMRs are calculated annually by HUD and set a general benchmark for what rents should what the rent should be across different metro areas across the nation. Okay, so HUD sets these FMRs based on their analysis, based on what they do, and they send this information over to the PHA, the public housing authorities. But the PHAs, the public housing authority, whether you're in Detroit, whether you're in Phoenix, whether you're in New York, whether you're in Washington, D.C., they have the power within some constraints to establish payment standards, which can be 90 to 110%, or in the case of DC, like 100, I think it's 169 or 180 something of what it is that HUD provides for their fair market rent. So there are certain jurisdictions whereby the payment standards are higher because they're more expensive areas. Like in Washington, D.C., our payment standards are higher than what typically HUD provides. The housing authority has been given leeway to do that. So what the rent should be across the board in different jurisdictions are traditionally calculated by HUD and then passed down to the local housing authorities. But the local housing authorities have the power to establish their own payment standards based on the dynamics locally. Okay, and what does this mean? What this means is that a 3-bedroom house in one part of the town could be different than the 3-bedroom price in another part of the town. Okay, depending on several things, especially the neighborhood and also the zip code where the property exists. So not all 3 bedrooms are the same across town. And so the local housing authorities have the authority to sort of decide what the rents, what the payment standards are, what the fair market rents are across their jurisdiction areas. Okay, so so again, you need to know that. So many successful investors study these payment standards. Okay, if I'm going to buy a property in zip code A, and if I'm going to buy a property in zip code B, if I'm going to buy a property in zip code C, and so forth, well, what are the rents in A, B, and C? Okay, they're published, and you should know, or you should research that. So that will guide you as to what's possible in rent, and based on that reality. So you don't just buy stuff and then find out later on that you bought a property in the wrong zip code, because the rents that you thought you're going to get, you're not going to get, because it's outside the payment standards within that jurisdiction. Okay, so that's what savvy investors do. That's what I do. I try to find out, okay, well, if I buy this property, what's my likely rent I can expect from the housing authority, and will it cover my debt? Will it cover my mortgage? Will it cover my insurance? Will it cover my taxes? Will it cover my maintenance, and so forth? If it does, fine. If it doesn't, then obviously I may want to reconsider whether I should buy that or not, or buy in a different area of town where the numbers make more sense. That's what successful, savvy investors, hopefully that is what you do. If you don't, then you need to consider that. So we tend to buy in more in, at least I do anyway, tend to buy in areas or parts of town where you're more likely to get higher rents. Now, it's if you get higher rents, generally it means that you're in a better area, which generally means you're paying more. So how do you balance that out? How do you make sense of that? You tend to buy a house in better areas, but houses that need work, so you can buy at a discounted price. Okay. So the idea is that you're buying, and my thing is that you're buying a C property, the C condition, in a B neighborhood, so in a better neighborhood. And therefore, if you make some improvements, then essentially you're buying a C property. You're buying a property at C prices in a B area. Hopefully that's not too confusing. So on the flip side, inexperienced landlords often assume that Section 8 pays the same rent regardless of location. They assume that. They don't know. And they get their surprise when they request a rent and it gets denied. Okay, they buy in areas with low payment standards or fail to justify rent increases when standards change. So as a result, they leave significant revenues on the table, while believing they've been capped out, or they've been duped, or they've been sort of shortchanged, when in fact they just didn't do their homework. They just didn't understand how it works. Okay, so so that's the first thing, is to understand the terminologies, how it's determined, and how it's sort of classified locally wherever you are. Okay, so let's talk about some action items that you can do in terms of understanding the power of fair market rents. Download your local PHA's payment standards and compare zip codes for each bedroom size. That's something you can do. Review HUD's published FMRs to understand the federal benchmark and its limitations. And also, you want to prioritize your acquisitions or rent increases based on neighborhoods and zip codes and things like that, based on the payment standards and fair market rents. Okay, so that's number one. Talks about fair market rents and payment standards. The next thing we're going to talk about is this thing called rent reasonableness. Reasonableness. What in the world is reasonable? Okay, that's another term that is used within the Section 8 program. And I suppose the question is, are your rent expectations realistic, or are they sabotaging your income? Are the rents that you are thinking of getting, or your expectations, are they reasonable, or they are unreasonable? Even if your rent request is within the payment standards, the PHA still has to approve it based on a term called rent reasonable. They have to do a rent reasonableness test. Rent reasonable test. They have to do that. This compares. So what is this? What does that mean? It compares your unit, your property, to similar unassisted rental properties in your area. Okay, so they want to know is, what are rents going for in your area where you are that are not participating in the Section 8 program. Okay, they want to make sure that they're not overpaying. So if the rent requested is significantly above the average of similar units, then there's a chance that it will be denied. Your rent increase will be denied, or the request that you're making is going to be denied. Okay, so the idea here is to ensure the program, the Section 8 program, isn't overpaying landlords. But like you and I, we know whenever there's a situation, it creates an opportunity. So by understanding the comps that the PHA is likely to use, landlords can make small upgrades. You can do things to adjust what you can ask for. So there's a range. Let's say that for zip code A, the range is from, I don't know, 1,000 to 1,200. Then the question becomes, what do I need to do to get 1,200? Okay, I'm sure that's what you want to know. Or you may be happy with 1,000. But why? Hey, if you're happy with 1,000, then maybe you don't need 1,200. However, if you think that 1,200 is better than 1,000, then you want to know, well, what can I do to to increase my chances of getting the 1,200? And that's where you need to understand how they determine the rents locally. There could be some upgrades that your local housing authority consider to be preferential, and they may give you some brownie points, I suppose. For example, I know in where I am, washer dryers are desirable. So if you have a washer dryer, that's something that they like. If you obviously have all the appliances, if you have a deck, if you have off-street parking, and things like that. So little things that you can do, that can increase the chances of you getting a slightly better rent if you're in a gray area. However, unsuccessful landlords, they don't know, they don't take the time to learn that. They assume that, just because they rehab the house, they should get top dollar, when in fact, that's not always the case. You're not going to get more money because you've got quartz countertops versus, I don't know, granite countertops. However, if you have, as I said before, a washer dryer, then you may get more than if you didn't have it. So again, that's some knowledge that you need to take on locally, and so that way your expectations are realistic and they match what is likely to be offered by the housing authority. So, and many times the zip code, the location, is really the driver. And so you want to buy in areas whereby you're likely to get more rent than other areas. That's my opinion anyway. I'm not really into buying just cheap part of town just for the sake of buying it. And so on. Anyway, that's a whole nother discussion. But the bottom line is that you have to justify, you have to support the data. So if your request is denied, you may want to appeal, but they're not going to approve it just based on your word. They want to have you provide data as to why you feel you should be getting the rent that you're requesting, and you have to support that and provide that to them. And maybe if you do that, they may reconsider, but that's not always the case. So, but again, landlords who get the higher rent, in my experience, and this is what I do, I prepare a clear, compelling case for why my unit deserves the rent which I'm requesting. Okay, it's just almost like an appraisal. You can't just talk to the appraiser, hey, I want you to give me a higher value for this house. They're just going to ignore whatever you say. However, if you provide data, if you have to provide comps, if you provide supporting information as to why you should get the extra money for your appraisal, then the appraiser may factor that in, and you may get what you're requesting. But it's all about data, and that's what savvy landlords, that's what savvy investors understand. It's not about emotions, it's about black and white data. Okay, you have to present that in a compelling case as to why you should get the rent that you're requesting. Okay, so what are the action items? Identify 3 or 4 comparables, unassisted properties in your area based on zip code, size, and condition. Make cost-effective upgrades to your property if you want to request an increase, and submit your rent comps if necessary with your RFTA or when you do your inspections. Okay, let's keep on moving to number 3. Strategic renovations that justify higher rents. What are the things that you can do to justify higher rents? And I kind of alluded to that earlier on. And the question is your property really worth what you are asking, or does it need a value boost? Is what you're requesting realistic, or is there something that you can do to increase the chances of you getting the rent that you are requesting? Well, not all renovations are created equal when it comes to Section 8 rentals. Some landlords invest in high-end finishes. I mentioned quartz countertops, custom cabinetry. In reality, they have minimal impact on the rent value. However, there are other things that have a greater impact. Again, it's to a certain extent, it depends on your local area. in my area, I mentioned washer dryer. I talked about upgrades that you've done to the house in terms of appliances, in terms of off-street parking. These are things that uh, they view favorably. And so, if you're going to do some upgrades to your house, if you got a limited budget and you want to know, well, what should I spend this money on to get the maximum return, then I suggest that you do some research first, and then you do your improvements accordingly. So that way you get the biggest bang for your buck when you're doing your rehabs. Okay. So, flooring, fresh paint, modern appliances, updated bathrooms, they tend to deliver a higher ROI than other things. Okay. So it's not emotions, it's not your personal taste, it's what is going to give you the best return on your investment. Inexperienced people, landlords, they choose pretty over practical, I suppose, overspending for little or no rent increase. You don't want to do that. Let's be strategic about it. Documentation also matters. You have to be able to. It's really good if you provide before and after photographs as well to justify the rents that you're requesting, also justify the rent increase. Okay, so halfway through action items. Prioritize upgrades that improve durability and meet common inspection standards. Avoid luxury features that clearly do not align with rent increases, and create so these are things that you can do. We're halfway through, so if you got some questions, please put in the chat box. I'm going to get to you in about 10 minutes. Anything to real estate, I'll be ready, available to talk to you about it. And if you want to book a one-on-one with me, by all means, go to my website, joeasamoah.com, www.joeasamoah.com. Press the button. It says Ask Dr. Joe. Ask Dr. Joe. You can book a one-on-one with me. They're really good sessions. I really enjoy them. I think I provide pretty good value. And everybody that's been there, I think for the most part, I've been more than happy, very satisfied with the results. Okay, moving on. Number 4. Mastering the RFTA and the lease approval process. RFTA, what in the world is that? Rafter. RFTA stands for Request for Tenancy Approval. That's a document that you have to complete and submit once you've decided to rent to a tenant that has a voucher. It's a pretty detailed process. It can be frustrating, but it's required. There's no way around it. Okay, so the difference between a smooth lease up and a multi-week delay often comes down to one thing: paperwork. Successful landlords like you and I, hopefully, treat this process like a high stakes transaction, and we come in there prepared. When we submit our documentation RFTA package, we make sure that everything is complete. All the I's are dotted, or the T's are crossed. We've double checked, triple checked, quadruple checked every detail. The rent amounts, the utility responsibilities, the unit features, amenities, and more. We double, triple, quadruple check that. Any mismatches, missing information, or inconsistency can lead to back and forth emails with your caseworker or with the housing authority, which slows down the process, and it could delay your tenant moving, which means that it could delay the rent that you receive. So veteran landlords, we know what information they're looking for. We assemble a full RFTA packet before we submit. We check it, dribble check it, and do our rent comps. We have photographs. We have a utility breakdown. We go through the inspection checklist. We go through all of those things to make sure our property is ready, and then we submit the paperwork. So this level of detail makes the process a lot more streamlined. It makes it less frustrating, and also it expedites approvals. Okay, and also shows that you're a professional. You know what you're doing. You're not just some gopher who's trying to figure this thing out. You know the deal. You know the rules. And I think that when people know that you know what's going on, you tend to have a lot more credibility, and things tend to move faster. However, landlords who provide or submit incomplete or sloppy RFTAs often find themselves, at the back end of the line. Oh gosh, you haven't done this, you haven't done that. They have to send it back to you. You then have to go fill it out, and then it goes back to the line. It's just a back and forth, which is really, a waste of time, a waste of energy, and will cost you as well. So, if you're not careful, if you drag out the process too long, the tenant may say, well, this is taking too long. Let me go find somewhere else. And they leave and they apply somewhere else. So action items, create a reusable RFTA checklist. And a lot of the information are pretty much the same. So you want to pull that together. Include documentation that supports your rent request and your unit condition, and so on. Okay, number 5. We've got 5 and 6. Got one more after this one. Navigating inspections like a pro. Navigating inspections like a pro. It all goes back down to the inspections. As part of the Section 8 program, an inspector from the housing authority has to come to your home and to make sure that your house meets what they call housing quality standards, or HQS. Also has to match that they meet, they have to meet, pretty much health and safety situations. So the question is, do your units pass the first time around, or are there endless delays? Do you pass first time round, or is there back and forth with your housing authority? Section 8 inspections are required, as I said before a lease can be approved. And failing these inspections can be time consuming, frustrating, and can be costly. Every day, essentially a unit is vacant is costing you money. It's lost rent. So smart investors like you and I hopefully build a pre-inspection protocol. Before we submit the paperwork, we go through the house and we check everything first to make sure everything is okay. We don't leave it to chance. Check all the doors, we check all the windows, we check the plumbing, we check the electrical, we check the heating. We check all those things to make sure that the house is likely to pass housing quality standards inspection. Now, your housing authority may also provide you with a checklist of the things that they will be checking. If they don't, you can always go online and get that list. And therefore, you can do a pre-review of your property before the inspector comes in. And the other thing, another tip is that it's good to have a clean place, a place that's clean, updated, well-maintained, because, first impressions from the inspector is sometimes lasting impressions. So if they walk in and everything's all over the place, you're asking for trouble. So, and something that some savvy investors do is they hire, an inspector, not from the housing authority, but there are people who used to be maybe worked for the housing authority who can do a pre-inspection for you for a price, I assume. And so they'll go in and they'll check everything and give you some ideas of things that you need to do before you submit the paperwork to the housing authority, and therefore increase the chances that you'll be successful. There are checklists, there are apps that you can do that. So the bottom line is we want to avoid surprises, and we want to be acting proactively rather than reactively. And those that don't prepare often fail, many times for silly things like, the outlet's not on properly, or this is not working properly, or it's just silly, leaky faucets, loose handrails. I mean, these are things that can be fixed beforehand. So if you can do that, then you avoid delays. Action items: use a full HQS checklist for your unit. Hire a third-party inspector or qualified contractor to do a mock inspection for you, and so on. Finally, number 6. Hopefully this is good, and let me know. Again, we're going to wrap it up in a second. 6, tenant selection and property matching. It all boils down to this, really. If you got a great house, if you got a crappy tenant, they're going to destroy your house. So how you select your tenant is the key. Most of your problems that you get as a landlord, especially as a Section 8 landlord, is really the bottom line is that you just got the wrong person in your house. And so what you can do to reduce that is to what's it called? It's to screen properly. So are you selecting the right tenants for the right properties, or are you setting yourself up for failure? Not all voucher holders are the same. They're not. You got the good, the bad, the ugly. You got the tier 1, tier 2, all the way to tier Z. One of the biggest mistakes that landlords make is accepting any tenant just because they have a voucher. That is an absolute no-no. They're not all the same. You got some really good, great families, and you got some real doozies as well in that. And you don't want to rent to a doozy. I've been there, done that. It's not good. It's too stressful. It's too emotional, and it just drains all your energy. Because what will happen is that there's a mismatch between, your property and what the tenant's expectations are. The key is aligning the tenant's needs with the property's strengths. And, large families, for example, at some point, they want a larger house. So if you got a small little house with small bedrooms, but it's a big family, at some point they're going to leave. If you got rent into a senior, then maybe they want the first floor. But the idea is that there's a lot of families out there who are looking for quality products, quality properties, and you as a savvy landlord will try to match what the marketplace is looking for against your property and what you are providing. Okay, so screening, I would suggest that you screen for lots of different things: behavior, lifestyle, compatibility, cleanliness is essential. What's their rental history like? Do they have good references or good situations from their current landlord, previous landlord? There's a lot of things you can do. And I think I've talked about screening several times. But it's the key. It's been the key to my success, is that I no longer just accept anybody. I'm catering to the tier 1 tenants. And they're out there, they're good people. And that's the kind of tenants I try to wrap my business around. Okay, in conclusion, that's it for the day. Maximizing rent under Section 8 isn't just about the numbers, it's about mastering the system. From understanding the payment standards and FMRs, fair market rents, to navigating inspections and tenant selection. Every decision you make can either enhance or erode your profit or your portfolio's performance. The landlord who wins in this space, hopefully the successful ones like you and I, we take a strategic approach, informed approach, and a process-driven approach. You don't need 100 units, you don't need 1,000 units, to make this work. What you need is knowledge, systems, and the willingness to apply best practices. Learn from others who've been there before you. Learn from me, learn from others. The lesson is in this blueprint is, hopefully I've shared with you, real world wins and mistakes occur. Let the guidelines, let the information I've shared with you to hopefully help you make smarter decisions. Okay, because the Section 8 can work. You can maximize your rents, but you have to understand how it works. You got to take a strategic, informed, and process-driven approach. Yes, maximize the rent, but don't just cross your fingers and hope for the best. Okay, you can do it. Don't undercharge, but again, take the time to learn and you'll be fine. Okay, my friends, that's it for today's education session. We're going to go to the Q&A in a second. So enter your question in the chat box and I'll get to them in a few minutes. Anything to do with real estate is fine. If you want to shoot me an email, you can shoot me an email at joe@joeasamoah.com, joe@joeasamoah.com. And if you want to book a one-on-one with me, you go to my website, www.joeasamoah.com, www.joeasamoah.com. And let's get down to the comments and see who's there. Let's have a look, my friends. Okay. Who do we have here? We have Carlis. Hope I spent it right. Hope you're doing well, Carlis. Hello. And greetings from Phoenix, Dr. Joe. Okay, hi, Datu. Hope you're doing well. In sunny Phoenix. Could you also comment on the government shutdown from Peter He? Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not part of the housing authority. I'm not part of the government, but I've been through several of these shutdowns over the years. And, in 35 years, there has never been a time where I didn't get my rent. Never. Okay. So, and I've been through several government shutdowns. So maybe this one's different, but for the most part, most housing authorities have to have reserves, and HUD has probably already set them the money and for your rents. So there's a pretty good chance you will get paid for your rent. I'm not sure if it's going to be indefinitely, but at least for another month or two. That should be the case. But again, I don't know. I'm just sharing with my experience. And last shutdown, I think, was what, 30 something days. The rents were paid. There was never an issue, never a holdup on the funds. So I expect that your housing authority rents should hit your accounts, if not today, within the next couple of days, unless the local housing authority is giving you some warnings. Now, when they cut back on funds, now that's slightly different. Several things may happen. So, for instance, if your housing authority's budget is, let's just say, 100 million, but for whatever reason, the federal government HUD gives them 80 million. So now they're $20 million in the hole. So they're going to have to save $20 million somehow. And that's where the fun starts, because there are different strategies that they use in order to, stay afloat. They may typically, what do you call it, prevent any more requesting rent increases. So they stop rent increases. There may be layoffs of staff in order to balance the budget. So there are several cost-cutting measures that they typically do. And what they do in Washington may be different to what they do in LA versus what they do in Phoenix, what they do in Hawaii, and so forth. So you may want to speak to some people locally who've been around for a while, and they can share with you typically what happens or what's happened in the past when there's been government shutdowns. I think they'll give you more insights than I would do. I'm very familiar with what happens in the Washington, D.C. area, because that's where I live, but I'm not too familiar what happens in Detroit or in Chicago or in San Diego or New York or wherever. That's, I think, it'd be in your best interest to seek people in those areas who understand, who've been around, and they can share with you their experience. Or you can call the housing authority, and they may be able to tell you there. So government shutdown, it's a big deal. But it's one of those things. It's gamemanship. It's posturing. It will end at some point. Who knows how long it's going to be? But it will end. I don't think the government's going to shut down forever. It's going to be, it could be, who knows, a week, a month, 2 months, 3 months. I don't know, but it will end at some point, and and then we'll take it from there. But this government, obviously, has a different approach compared to other past administrations. So it's quite a bit of uncertainty, but this too shall pass, as they say. Okay, Nestor. Hey, Dr. Joe, I booked a deep dive session with you on Wednesday, October the 15th. Yes, I'm looking forward to the session. Yes, I'm looking forward to meeting with you, speaking with you, Nestor. I know you're a frequenter, but I've never actually spoke with you, so I look forward to our session. Okay, so you continue. My rental has been renovated and rent ready since February. However, I refuse to chase after the money and just move anyone in. Okay. And I'm waiting for our deep dive session so you can give me some advice on how I can get it up and running on the Section 8 program. Okay, I can give you some ideas there. So it sounds like you got a property which you renovated, and since February, my goodness. So we're in the 10th month now. So that's 8 months. It's been vacant for 8 months. Something is not right there. That sounds a heck of a long time. And I'm sure that's eating into your cash flow, because I assume that you may have a debt on that property. So you're going to eat in that yourself. So yeah, we need to talk. I can give you some ideas on what you can do to market your property, to increase visibility, hopefully, and also to screen prospective tenants and hopefully get your property rented to a tier 1 tenant who will take care of your house, pay the rent, pleasant to deal with, and hopefully stay a long time. So I look forward to that one. But yeah, that's a long time, Nestor, for a place to be vacant. Something is happening there. which I don't know what it is, but I'm looking forward to our discussion. October the 15th, that's 2 more weeks. I would suggest that you may want to try and rebook that one a little earlier, because each day that goes by is a day lost rent. Yeah, I'm not sure why you picked a date so far ahead, but if you want to do it earlier, Nestor, that's fine with me. Just pick a day that that works with you, and then we'll take it from there. Okay, Miles. Again, if you got some questions, please put them in the chat box, and I'll get to them shortly. Question: would you recommend using a property manager for Section 8, or would I be better off with a non-Section 8 if using a property manager? You're thinking about moving out of the country and want to rent my house. Okay. And also, my house isn't in the best neighborhood. Have you found a less desirable location is more suited for Section 8 or non-Section 8? Oh my goodness. Okay, Miles, I'm going to see if I can answer your questions. So Miles' question is, question one is, would you recommend using a property manager for Section 8, or would I be better off with a non-Section 8 if using a property manager? I think it's going to depend on the property manager's area of expertise, areas of comfort, and so on. Some property management managers are very familiar with Section 8 and the Section 8 program. Some of them are not. And if you have a property whereby you have a Section 8 tenant, or you're looking for a Section 8 tenant, I would say you may want to go with somebody who has experience renting to clients who participate in that program. Because, you know, there's a lot of moving parts when you're dealing with Section 8. There's a lot of forms, there are regulations, there's a process which you have to follow. If you don't follow it, you're not getting your money. It's as simple as that. These are federal regulations. You're using federal funds, and therefore, you know, there's accountability, and there are regs that you have to comply with. Otherwise, you know, they're not going to sign the contract for you. So, not all property managers understand that, are familiar with that, and therefore, if you're going to go that route, I would suggest that you go with somebody who has experience with Section 8. Now, if you don't want to select a Section 8 tenant and you want to go with market renters, then obviously most property management companies are familiar with, you know, renting to non-Section 8 voucher holders. So in that case, you probably have a larger pool of people to choose from. So again, if you're going to go with Section 8, I would suggest that you start screening, start looking to get some referrals of property management companies that are familiar with the program and have expertise in that. And if you're not going to participate in the program, obviously it's not necessary. Okay, so that's my thought. That's to your question. Hopefully that makes sense. On a personal level, I have yet to find any property management company that's any good. Now, that's not a slight on property management companies. It's just that, you know, they just don't do it the way I do it. And I'm looking for 5, 10, 15, 20-year tenants. And so there's a way, if you have that as your goal, there's just a different way that you do business, which most management companies are just not set up for that. Also, my house isn't in the best neighborhoods. Okay. Have you found a less desirable location is more suited for Section 8 or non-Section 8 tenants? Less desirable locations. Well, you know, I mean, are you talking about a war zone? Are you talking about, you know, a Class C neighborhood, B neighborhood, D neighborhood, E neighborhood? I mean, what I'm not too sure when you say less desirable. But the bottom line is that there are people living everywhere. So whether you're in the A neighborhood, the best part in town, you know, the Beverly Hills of your location, or you're in the war zone, people live there. And so you can always find someone to live in your property. The problem is that at least I just don't want to rent to anybody. I just don't want a body in my house. Because if you get the wrong person in your house, you're going to have a lot of problems. So what I found with Section 8 tenants, they don't need to or desire or yearning. Obviously, everyone wants to live in a nice area, but they don't need to be in Beverly Hills to be happy. They just don't want to be in bad areas where they're not safe. And because if they're not safe, if their children, if they feel like the children are not safe, and they're worried all the time about break-ins and crime and those kind of things, at some point they're going to leave, and you're going to have a turnover. And so, you know, if you're in a neighborhood where, again, it doesn't have to be Beverly Hills, but as long as it's in a decent area where you can attract quality families or quality people, then you should be okay. It doesn't have to be the house on top of the hill, and all that kind of stuff. There are tenants who will love to live in your home if the rent is reasonable, if the amenities that you're offering are fair, and so you don't always have to have the latest and greatest thing as well. Okay, so I mean, that's my take anyway. There are families that will take that want to live in your area where your property is, Miles. Your challenge is to understand who these tenants are, what their needs are, and then you target them in your advertising. Target them. And so you talk to them in your ad. It's not a generic ad. You talk to these folks. You highlight all the amenities that are attractive to them. You word it in such a way that you speak to them. I stage my homes. I'm not saying you should do that. I stage my home because I'm trying to differentiate my house from my competition. I understand that the best, better families, they have choices. They're not just going to take anything and live anywhere, and so on. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful, Miles. Again, if you want more specifics, by all means, feel free to book a one-on-one with me, and then we'll take it from there. Okay, 7:50. I'm going to kind of wrap it up for the day. Hopefully today was a good one for you. Hopefully everyone's learned about how to maximize their rents and got a game plan, got the strategy together. Obviously, I kind of talked at a high level. There's a lot more to this on a deeper level. If you're thinking about getting a rent increase, you may want to book a one-on-one with me where we can do a deep dive. That way you can max your rent and you don't leave money on the table. That alone will save it, it's worth the call with me. Um, and so on. So where we are, the rents are a little higher than where maybe you are, but it's still the same process. And there are certain terminologies that you should be familiar with: the fair market rents, the payment standards, affordability, and what determines whether you get the rent that you want or not. With that said, my friends, I will bid you a good evening, and hopefully this was helpful. And hopefully I will see you next Wednesday. I am off to the Caribbean in about a month from now. Oh no, about 21 days. So 3 weeks from now, I'll be off to Dominica. We're going on to the Creole Fest. And in Dominica, they call it a nature island, not Dominican Republic, the Commonwealth of Dominica. And that is in the Eastern Caribbean. They call it a nature island, very natural, and mountains and grass, very green, very sort of traditional, beautiful island. So I'll be going there for about nearly a couple of weeks, and then I'm off to Atlanta. I'll be a speaker at the Own It, Live It conference in Atlanta. So if you're in Atlanta, I will be over there at the November the 5th, 6th, 7th, I think it is. So I'll be there for a few days down there. So check out. Hopefully, if you're there, I'll meet you there as well. My friends, have yourself a wonderful evening. Take care. Bye for now.